coming in. It is 6:01. So welcome everyone to our 2023 Salt River Watershed Watch Annual Conference. I'm excited we have the option of being in person this year. We've got the hybrid option. So I know in the audience you can't see online and vice versa very well, but I don't know, what are we at? Maybe 20, 25 in our audience here, and online we've got maybe 10, something like that. So really great turnout. Just let me know in the back or on Zoom if you're having trouble hearing me, or if there's any other concerns that pop up, and we'll make this hybrid meeting a success. And we're also recording this just so people know. All right, so just a couple meeting logistics. If you are on Zoom, just do me and Joanne a favor, put your name and email in the chat so we can make sure to account for your time tonight, as well as make sure you're on our list to follow up with about this conference and in the future. Just mute yourself, make sure you're muted unless you're asking a question, and feel free to leave your camera on or turn your camera off, whatever your preference is. You've also got the chat for conversations. I said the meeting's being recorded. If you're here in person, if you didn't sign in, just please make sure you sign in the back with Perry. She's got a sign-in sheet. If we have questions, some ambiance here. If there's any questions, we'll probably just make sure you speak up. We'll just want to make sure we repeat those for our online audience. Restrooms, if you go out the door, around to your right, there's restrooms there. Food here, again, help yourself. We're going to have some dessert, if that hasn't happened yet, at our intermission. Any other logistics anybody wants to cover? Questions? No. All right, awesome. And everybody should have an agenda. We've got a really packed agenda tonight, so I'm going to just get right into it. But thank you so much to our speakers, to our steering committee, to the library, to everybody that's helped, to Russ and Linda and David for providing this great buffet we have over there. And before I forget, if speakers, I've got some little homegrown black-eyed Susans if you would like a plant to take home, help yourself. And if there's extra at the end, then anybody can have them. All right, so we're going to do things, switch our order up a little bit differently this year. I'm going to start us off with our State of the Salt River Watershed Watch for 2023. So I'm going to do a quick overview of Salt River Watershed Watch, talk about our plans for this year, talk about how to get involved, recognize our amazing group of volunteers, talk a little bit about some upcoming organizational changes, then fundraising. I'm going to pass it over to our treasurer, Shelby Jett, to talk about funding, and then over to Colin Duncan, who has graciously prepared our 2022 data report. All right, so Salt River Watershed Watch, this organization exists within the boundaries of a watershed. So just a reminder, have to do this. What is a watershed? So watershed, it's that area of land that when it rains or there's snow melt, which happens sometimes here, all that water either flows across the land or infiltrates the ground as groundwater and eventually leads to the same point in a stream. So the quality of that stream is a reflection of what's happening on the land that it drains to. And we define watersheds at different scales, which I'm going to talk about a little more in a sec. And we are always in a watershed. So a basin is what we call a large scale watershed, and Kentucky has 7 watershed basins. And each basin has its own watershed watch organization. So we are the Salt River Basin Watershed Watch. So the Salt River Basin, you can see, includes all or part of 18 counties. And the waterways in the Salt River Basin either flow directly to the Ohio River or they flow to the Salt River and then out to the Ohio River at West Point. So very simple overview. What does Watershed Watch do? We train and certify volunteers. We conduct field assessments. We collect samples for lab analyses, and we discuss and interpret results. Our mission is to support water quality monitoring that informs, connects, and empowers both volunteers and their communities for both the improvement and protection of Kentucky's water resources. So this organization started back in 1998. And since that time, there's been over 130 people that have been trained in our phase 1 core monitoring. So that's the monitoring where you do the grab sample for bacteria, pH, temperature, dissolved oxygen, and conductivity. We have a steering committee that meets monthly on the second Wednesday of the month at noon on Zoom. And just a reminder that anyone is welcome to participate in that meeting. The need for watershed watch. So Kentucky has over 90,000 miles of streams, and most of these streams are not ever assessed. Nobody goes and sees them, nobody has eyes on them, and nobody's collecting any information about the water quality of those streams for most of them. So with Watershed Watch, we have the ability to help fill this gap. So we're able to collect data multiple times a year. This creates a long-standing record. Samplers become very familiar with their site so they can identify if something has happened in the interim between when they were there last. And this data can be used as what we call scoping level data for Kentucky Division of Water or other organizations to be able to help identify critical areas where we might need to make some water quality improvements. And then Watershed Watch volunteers they have the ability to assist with projects and pursue their own interests. So it's really self-driven by our volunteers. In a typical year, so we start off our year with this excitement at our annual conference in February. March and April is our time for recertification. So if you haven't been recertified or your original training was 3 years ago, it's time to recertify. And then we also have trainings for new samplers. And then in May, July, and September, we do our field chemistry and bacteria grab sample collection. In June, we do our habitat monitoring and macroinvertebrate sampling. And then year round, we have, as we can, pilot studies, group projects, and supporting partners in the region and throughout the state. So this year, if you've have in your repeated yearly calendar of the second weekend in May, July, and September, you're gonna wanna change that because this year we've adjusted 2 of our weekends. So we're still on that second weekend of May sampling, but because of the holidays, I think it was, they moved the July and September a week later. So we're on the second week in May, and I'll send this out again, but second week in May and 3rd weeks of July and September. And then again in June, in that time frame on your own is going to be that biological and habitat assessment. We've got 2 spring trainings right now in the works. One of them is going to be at Blue Moon Canoe. Scooter Thompson, who's the owner, has graciously offered to let us use his site, as well as after we do the training in the morning. This is going to be on April 29th, the last Saturday in April. We have the option to go and paddle the river. We did that once before. It's really fun. If you don't need the training, but you want to come paddle, come join us. That's fine too. So just wait for information about that. And then we're also working with MSD to plan a training that's specific to Beargrass Creek. And more information is going to come on that as well. All right, quickly getting involved beyond our sampling program. Consider joining the steering committee. So you can join the committee, or maybe you just have a specific task you're interested in, a passion for something, an idea. That's great too. Fundraising, helping with volunteer recruitment, serving as either a runner or a substitute runner. Those are really helpful. Sampling teams, mentors, any other ideas you have, let us know. We're really only as strong as our volunteers. Somebody else had this idea I thought was really great. Support Watershed Watch on your birthday. You can create a Facebook event for your birthday, link it to our donation page on KWA's website, and what could be a better way than supporting clean water and citizen science as you make another trip around the sun. Volunteer recognition. So I got 3 slides here of volunteers who have been trained for that phase 1 training that we do, that core monitoring. So, and I apologize if you don't see your name, let me know. We're trying to figure all this out, but we just want to make sure we recognize volunteers. So we have a whole list from 2010 to 2019. I mentioned that we've had over 130 people get this training in total. And then a smaller group from 2000 to 2009. And then we have our sort of OG sampler group from 1998 when the organization started. So thank you to volunteers. And then this is going to be easier for in person than Zoom, but if you're on Zoom, I would love for you to just write in the chat how many years you've been monitoring. If you're here in person and you are a volunteer sampler, please raise your hand. If you've been sampling more than 2 years, keep your hand up. More than 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20, we got a few left, more than 20 years. Woo. And I hope in another 20 years, you all will still be here and you can have your hands raised as well. All right, I'm going to briefly talk about some organizational changes happening, and we're sort of considering this our watershed moment. Appropriate, right? Okay, so our organizational structure, you can see Watershed Watch Kentucky. It's the state umbrella organization that supports Watershed Watch, supports the basins. But the basins, these 7 basins, really exist as their own separate organizations, doing similar things, but sort of doing it on their own. There's a mix of both. As far as staff, between the people that are paid to spend time with Watershed Watch, we have about 3.5 full-time employees. We're fully grant funded, grants and donations. We can't accept funds tonight because we're at this public space in the library, but I can tell you, you can go online and donate. As far as monitoring, we do water chemistry, bacteria, biological habitat, and we also monitor lakes and streams. So in terms of Watershed Watch in Kentucky versus the basin, so Watershed Watch in Kentucky, WWKY, and then we have these 7 basins. So essentially, Watershed Watch in Kentucky has a board. There's leadership on this board from representatives of those 7 basins, as well as the partner organizations. There's also committees at the state level, which has representatives from the partner organizations in the 7 basins. Watershed Watch in Kentucky is a 501c3, and they have been able to obtain a good amount of grant funding that has helped the individual basins. But it's not sustainable. So it's kind of that grant process where you keep trying to get more funding. They've helped us define our mission for the state, as well as develop a really nice strategic plan. The basins, what the basins sort of do on their own is they have their own leadership structure. So we have our individual steering committee. We're responsible for our own finances. So we are not a 501c3 at Salt River Watershed Watch. Some of the basins are. We organize our own annual conference, do our own fundraising, maintain our own website and social media. I finally figured out how to access our Facebook 2 weeks ago. They're responsible for volunteer recruitment, communication, training, and except for unique situations, we don't have paid staff. So at Salt River Watershed Watch, we are fully volunteer based. So what do basins share? So all basins work with Division of Water, the volunteer coordinator, Joanne Palmer, who we love to have. We share the data portal, procedures, equipment for monitoring. We share the schedules for monitoring. We are able to get some of those funds secured by Watershed Watch in Kentucky, as well as we have leadership roles on the boards and committees. So what are we looking at doing? Without having time to go really deep into this, we're looking at consolidating, centralizing these 7 individual organizations into one. So everybody's going to work together, and there's not going to be 7 really distinct basin organizations sort of out here trying to do our own thing while also doing the same thing as others under the same mission. How will we improve? We're thinking financial, communication, coordination, efficiency, data to action projects, and improving our whole volunteer experience. So all very good things. But in terms of next steps, so we have an upcoming vote on this. So there's voting members. So as your chair, I am the voting member on the board for Watershed Watch in Kentucky. So we're going to have a vote to say, yes, we want to centralize, and then sort of start to figure it out from there and how we can do better. If you are interested in this, you're welcome to find out more. You are more than welcome to participate in this process and provide input. Just let us know. Okay, fundraising and events. So we had a really amazing fundraising effort last fall. Thank you for those who were there, who helped, who sat out in the cold. So this was in October at Apocalypse Brew Works. Through the donations there, through the effort, kind of this focused effort, we were able to raise over $3,000, which puts us in really good shape for this year. And then David, if you want to talk about, I'm going to go a couple minutes. If you want to talk about, and you and Susan, this upcoming event.
Just quickly, I have several large Voyager canoes and encourage people to go out and sample and clean up Beargrass Creek. So on Earth Day, the Salt River Watershed Watch, the Beargrass Creek Alliance, and the River City Paddle Sports is offering a free deal, 6:30 in the morning, because it just happens to be dawn and it's the best time to see wildlife. But also it happens to be Thunder Over Louisville Day and the air show. So we want to get out of downtown before that happens. So this is the alternative, but it just so happens that the same day, the Beargrass Creek Alliance and the Kentucky Waterways Alliance is doing.
We are doing a Beargrass clean sweep. And so if you are not up for getting up at 6:30, well, I guess you have to get up way earlier than 6:30 to ride in a Voyager canoe on Beargrass Creek, which is a wonderful experience. Feel free to join and Kentucky Waterways Alliance and the Beargrass Creek Alliance and Councilman Andrew Owen and many other partners who are going to put on the Beargrass clean sweep on Earth Day. And the stay tuned for all the specifics, but you could actually probably participate in both. You could go to Dr.
We
Wick's
would
event
welcome everybody. I think Mayor Greenberg is going to be there, along with several Metro Council people at 6:30 in the morning. And our underlying message is, let's fund the Beargrass Creek Restoration Initiative, as well as clean up for that day.
That's right. Thank you.
Thank you. And to talk about another fundraiser we're having later this summer that I'm really excited for, I'll have Carmel come up. Carmel reached out to me recently with this awesome idea. She's in the band, The Remedy of Louisville, and they're just an awesome, I've never heard you before, but I'm excited.
But we are awesome.
I'm
Somebody asked me, said, what are you doing these days? I'm like, nothing. But I have been doing some quilting and I've been playing some music, and I thought, well, how can I do this as part of my Watershed Watch deal? So I thought, let's have a fundraiser. So here's what we've got cooked up. On July the 8th, which is a Saturday, at the Shady Glen River Club, which is out on the river, out River Road, north of like around Prospect. It's out of way, so you have to want to come. We're gonna have a to-do, and in the afternoon, we're gonna try and get David Wicks to bring the big canoes so people can take canoe rides out on the Ohio River. The people there at the Shady Glen River Club will take people up about a mile up to do a float. If you bring a kayak or a inner tube or whatever, you will just float down the river, that's fine. So we're gonna have food, just some burgers and brats and stuff on the grill to purchase. There's no cover charge for this party, but we're gonna have a party on the river. So we're gonna have food and drinks, and you can buy the food and drinks. What else? Then we're gonna have, the band is gonna play probably from about 5:30 to about 9. And it's right on the river. And then at 9 o'clock, the neighbors next door are having a huge fireworks display. So we get that too. So what I'm thinking is we can make this into a fundraiser. What I'd like to do is have somebody have some tables and information up there. So because the Shady Glen River Club people will be there, their neighbors will be there, and we can talk to them about what we do, maybe recruit a few people to help, but they are river people. So they are definitely interested in what we do. They may or may not know it, but I'm sure they are. So we can talk to them. And then if everybody who can come will bring 3 friends, then when we do our fundraising, pass the hat, they can put their money into the coffers. You're doing enough. I mean, you can always put in more, of course, but bring some friends that would like a dinner. I mean, a night out where all they have to do is pay for the dinner, but they get dancing, they get fireworks, they get rides in the canoe, they just get fun stuff. And oh, and my quilting thing, I made a picnic blanket. It's not done yet. I haven't quilted it yet, but anyway, we can make I don't know, we can raffle it, sell it, door prize it, I don't care. But anyway, this is, so I thought, blue and green for a little Earth Day watering, whatever. So anyway, so this is what I've been doing, and I hope, does this sound like an interesting thing? Who says if the day is free, I would like to come? Yeah. Just because I need to make sure and tell the people how much food they're going to make when we get a better idea. Who thinks you could bring 3 friends? Okay, because that's where it makes all the difference. You know, we could go and have a party with ourselves, but if we want to make fundraisers and talk to people about what we do, what a better time to do it. So anyway, July the 8th, you'll get more information about that, but I'm going to quit now.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And I'm gonna have Shelby Jett, our treasurer, come up to just talk about funding, which is always exciting when you have money. So
So did you ever see a treasurer that never touched the money?
if you want to go up to the mic here just to make sure.
They want to see me. Ha! Okay, where do we stand financially? Is that in this last year, we started out with $2,200 and we had $4,200 in donations. I think they've got a few more that credited. And grants, $6,500. Our expenses were lab fees, close to $3,000, $2,800. Postage, getting the sample containers to you, $436. Supplies, Joanne's got supplies for us, $1,300, and a miscellaneous admin thing I had to throw in there to make everything balance. Our current balance is $8,365. So we got enough to get through this year. But I understand that the Virginia grant is over. So this line that says $6,500 in grants, this coming year will be zero. But we've got to get donations going. Next slide. Where's your?
So come on July 8th and bring some
Oh.
friends and we'll make sure.
Here we go. Now, for donations, we use the Kentucky Waterway Alliance. This is off of their website, kwalliance.org. And if you go over to the right, there's our groups, drop that down as Salt River. And we have Creek Friends, Creek Supporters, Creek Champions, and Creek Heroes for the different levels of donations. And this is the best way to get money to Salt River Watershed Watch. Whoops, I'm going too far.
That's right.
I'm going too far. Okay. I'm gonna let you take that over.
Okay. Thanks, Shelby. And I will say it's so nice to have a treasurer. Really appreciate Shelby stepping up to help us on the financials. In terms of how financials are managed, also a huge thanks to Kentucky Waterways Alliance and just recognizing their support because we don't have to touch the money because you can just donate directly through KWA's website and that really helps us out a lot. So thank you to KWA. I'm going to turn it over to Colin Duncan. Colin is a Bellarmine student who has been interning, and I was thrilled to find out that he wanted to take charge of our 2022 report for sampling. Before I turn it over to Colin, I did a quick tally just so you know. So 2022 sampling, May, July, September, number of sites sampled and number of samplers sampling, just in case you're interested. So September was our biggest month with 46 individual sites sampled by 33 samplers. And then these are the names. I hope I got everybody, but again, just recognition for these are the people who actively sampled in 2022. So we had 39 people. All right, pass it over to Duncan. And I think you should be all set. If you need to move something around, you can.
Oh, I see. Hey, everyone. Let me just get this set up here really quick. Awesome. Can I hide the, okay, perfect. So today I'm going to be talking to you about the Salt River Watershed Watch 2022 data. The Salt River Watershed Watch report is a yearly informational summary which discusses the health of several local watersheds across the Salt River Basin in northern Kentucky. This report has been released annually for several years now, and each release is another way to ensure that water quality standards are being met statewide. Salt River Watershed Watch helps gather the data, which is used to compare current water quality to the standard for human health and aquatic and ecosystem biodiversity and monitor for any changes. And in 2022, there were a total of 136 active monitoring sites with 106 sites available with available data on the Watershed Watch in Kentucky's website. Various parameters are being measured across these watersheds with factors such as conductivity, dissolved oxygen, pH, temperature, and turbidity being important factors for identifying the health concerns for aquatic life. And an excess in any one of these parameters could be an indication that water quality guidelines are not being followed in some areas or that a new source of pollution has made its way into the stream. E. coli levels are also being monitored across these streams and are especially important to monitor because of the human aspect of waterways. And while E. coli is a natural component of streams and most of the bacteria are harmless to humans, high numbers of E. coli can indicate human waste or sewage contamination, and this high concentration could mean that additional pathogens are entering the water, which could infect humans or animals. Water samples are collected 3 times a year. Once in the spring, once in the summer, and once in the fall to monitor changes across the seasons, which Becca just mentioned. There is a set sampling date so that the Salt River Watershed Watch can have consistent data for the season as well. And in order to generate data for a local watershed, at least 3 separate sampling sites must be present in that area with available data for each site. I'll first talk about the E. coli results for this year. E. coli is a common concern across Kentucky waterways, and the data from 2022 shows some minor improvements and some minor setbacks from previous data. There was a sharp decrease in sites rated as poor, decreasing from 30 sites in 2021 to 10 sites in 2022, which is really good. And there were also 13 more sites rated as excellent this year as compared to last year. However, there were more sites rated as fair than good this year, indicating that a slight increase in E. coli levels in some basins. So any streams and sampling sites that were in the good category have either shifted into fair or excellent over the year. I already talked about that. The levels this year do not raise concern and are fairly consistent with the previous year's data, but additional sampling should continue, especially around areas with livestock farms, as sites close to those farms typically have higher concentrations of E. coli. I'll next talk about the field chemistry data. In 2022, there was a higher number of results for each parameter of water chemistry, which means that the data better reflects the actual state of the Salt River watershed. So go our volunteers. The streams in the Salt River Basin are cold water streams, and the temperatures were consistent with healthy levels for aquatic life year round, which is good. And there were general improvements across this board this year with no poor ratings in pH or conductivity, which is good. It means that there's a lack of inorganic substances entering the water, causing problems. The dissolved oxygen content, however, has shifted over the course of the previous year, with most of the sites only having a fair level of dissolved oxygen, which could be due in part to the varying range of turbidity levels across the sites, excess sediment deposits due to erosion and other factors. Overall, the field chemistry data for 2022 indicates that the Kentucky watersheds are generally getting healthier, but the high number of streams with only a fair amount of dissolved oxygen could cause stress on aquatic life. So efforts to increase soil retention to reduce erosion and turbidity should be a focus going forward in stream management. Out of the 8 local basins that were available for E. coli data this year, 1 of the sites received a B grade, 5 of the sites received a C grade, and 2 of them received a D grade. There have been general improvements over last year's data, with less sites having very high concentrations of E. coli, but overall local basin health has decreased in some areas. But overall, over the past 5 years, the E. coli levels have generally decreased, so that means we're heading in the right direction. And out of the same 8 local basins available for water chemistry data, 2 sites received an A grade, 5 sites received a B grade, and 1 site received a D grade. Similar to E. coli, the 5-year improvement shows that the water chemistry has been improving. So we are still headed in the right direction, but there is always room for improvement in the number of tests conducted in these areas in each basin over the year. So additional sampling would always be helpful. Last week, I traveled for my internship and I was actually able to visit some of these sites that are present in the data portal. I was able to visit sites in Cox's Creek, Harrods Creek, and Muddy Fork. There are some frustrations present in the Cox's Creek Basin, especially with a waste lagoon that is present on one of the farmlands. So there's just a giant pool of cattle waste, which could eventually seep into the water and cause additional E. coli to enter the waterways. Harrods Creek seems to have some improvements, but there are some areas on the site which were experiencing some significant erosion, which could be an issue in the future. And the Muddy Fork of Beargrass Creek was also in really great condition, and the water was very clear, which is mostly due to a settling pool, which is present upstream, which helps collect any excess sediment or runoff. And I would also like to thank Shelby and David for showing me around their sites last week, coming out in the cold. I really appreciated that. And is Michael on the call too? I'd like to thank you too, Michael. I didn't see him here. So all of the data from this presentation is available on the Watershed Watch in Kentucky's data portal. If anybody has any questions about how to navigate that data portal, I can answer those. The data portal is very in-depth and gives specific information regarding the time the sample was taken, what was being tested for, who sampled it, and where it was sampled. One can look up information about a specific stream, information about the stream health in a certain county, or even a specific sampling site. And as you can see here, there is data available not just for the Salt River watershed, but for all the watersheds across Kentucky. And keep an eye out for upcoming instructional videos on how to navigate the data portal, as I will be making those and uploading those in the coming weeks. And I would like to thank you all for listening. And if anybody has any questions, I would love to answer those.
How long can I have you on call for? Oh, I meant like, if I get an email, can I just talk to Colin? He's an expert. That brings us to the end of our State of the Salt River Watershed Watch. Do we have maybe a minute? Any questions, thoughts, comments? Yes, Mark.
So if you're gonna make a donation for the Salt River Watershed Watch, then everything merges, what happens to it? Does it just go into like a big pot for the whole thing or what?
All right, I'll repeat the question for online. So the question was about if Salt River Watershed Watch merges with the other basins, what happens to our pot of money? That's something we haven't figured out yet. So we'll have to let you know. It's a concern. I don't see us losing. We're not going to lose money. You know, it's just sort of making it fair for everybody. But
You know, another thing about it is maybe the rich people in Kentucky River share some of their money for the Salt River. So maybe it's a good thing that it's all.
so comment from David Wicks that the Kentucky River, which is the most wealthy, I guess we could say, basin, could share it with all of us too. So yeah, there's lots of logistics to figure out. We're just at this kind of, like I said, like a tipping point watershed moment where we're doing really well as a Salt River. There's another basin that's basically non-existent anymore, because if you just don't have the volunteer commitment and enthusiasm, it just doesn't keep working. So we want to make sure we've got support throughout the whole state. Good question though. Yeah, Don.
Has there been any change in the number of volunteers or sites being sampled?
Yeah, so question was change in volunteers and sites sampled. Just off the top of my head, we went down quite a bit during 2020, 2021. Last year looked a lot better compared to previous years. I'd have to look again. I think
No big changes. So
I think we've probably gone down a little since like pre-COVID still. But I'm glad to see numbers up higher last year compared to the 2020. We canceled the first two sampling events. So I wouldn't say we're doing a lot better number of sampler wise, but I don't think we're doing a whole lot worse than pre-COVID.
that one of the things that might be on the agenda for the consolidated is volunteers and getting more volunteers.
Yeah, so question was about if we consolidate getting more volunteers, and that's exactly right. Having just greater capacity. If you have, say 7 groups sitting in a room all talking about the same thing, what if we just sat together and figured it out? I mean, just organization wise, it just makes a lot of sense. So that's the goal. Better, not just more volunteers, but a better volunteer experience, more support. We want people to be the volunteers that they want to be and have, get out of this organization what they want. Is there another? Yeah, Ed.
You can give to Kentucky Waterways Alliance. Kentucky Waterways Alliance just have a line item.
Yeah, so good. So if you donate, it's about donations. So if you donate online, there is a specific link for Salt River Watershed Watch. You can make extra sure it goes to Salt River Watershed Watch. If you put, there's a memo you can put, or if you write a check, you can write Salt River Watershed Watch, because then they won't know if you mail in a check. But online, there's a link that's specific to Watershed Watch. Mhm. All right, well, I'm out of time, so thank you all, and we are going to pass it off to Dr. Martha Carlson. And let me get this. So Martha is the chair and associate professor for the environmental studies program at Bellarmine. I met Martha last year, and she's going to talk about some of the fun things that we did together. And come on up. I think you should be all set.
Thank
You're up
you.
there. You've got notes there.
Yeah, just advance.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for this opportunity to talk tonight. I've also got Taylor, one of my students here, that's going to talk about our community engaged teaching with Salt River Watershed Watch, or community engaged course, I guess. So a lot of my work recently has been in community engagement at Bellarmine. So this slide deck, there's some data in it about the utility of utilizing student data to make management decisions. It's my co-author is that I want to recognize also is Dr. Carolyn Waters, who's in the room tonight as well. And then Charlie Combs, who's another undergraduate student that worked on this with us too. So I'm going to try to go through the data part pretty quickly so that we can get to the more experiential part and let Taylor tell you about the impact of that work or that experience. So the motivation for this is really engagement. We were going out, so Carolyn had identified, we were going out with these labs every semester, multiple times a year, and gathering all these data, but they weren't being used in any way, right? And so she identified a potential area where we could, utilize maybe civic science or community engaged science to actually have an impact. And so we started working on that. She sort of was the inspiration, and then since then I've picked up the work to walk alongside. So the point here is to highlight how Salt River Watershed Watch community engagement can really improve both learning for the students and water quality in the basin. And then just articulate best practices and community engaged student research, and then create ripple effects, if you will, echoing what Neil will talk about. So just brief background, research question, methods, findings, but most of the time spent on interpretation and implications of the work with Taylor. So as we've heard, issues in water quality, we've had so many land cover changes to urban, agricultural, mining, impoundment, other stressors in Kentucky and elsewhere. The over 90,000 miles of stream networks in Kentucky have minimal monitoring capacity that Becca highlighted. Monitoring really is needed to guide watershed planning and action. A report came out last year that suggested that of the streams that were assessed, 67% were impaired. And so there's an imperative here, right, to work on monitoring and therefore inform watershed management. So inter-community partnerships, these are partnerships between universities and water quality agencies. They could be governmental agencies, they could be nonprofit agencies like Watershed Watch. And the partnerships really give context to student learning. They help agencies meet their mission through data collection and research. So it's mutual and reciprocal, and that's very important in this work, that the course learning outcomes are really driven by the community partner, and the students gain expertise in the process. And so this picture is from our environmental science class last fall. Taylor's in this picture right here. And Becca's in this picture on the left. Is that you, Becca? You're in the middle. Oh, you're in the middle. Yeah, she's right there in the middle arrow. And then Nia is my co-sampler at the South Fork Beargrass Creek from Kentucky Division of Water. So lots of people coming together to really enrich the learning experience for the students, but also provide a service to the community. So when I'm talking about community engagement, we're talking about collaboration between institutions of higher education and their larger communities for the mutual creation and exchange of knowledge and resources in the context of partnership and reciprocity. So I just want to once again echo that importance of reciprocity. It's both and. And we know from lots of research that enlisting students in the data analysis process results in students reporting greater care in avoiding errors in data collection. Civic science or community engaged science and place-based education results in greater science and environmental literacy and civically responsible action. Authentic and reciprocal community partnership development can lead to success in civic science monitoring of water quality, despite the challenges such as recruiting volunteers or data, like the quality of the data, right, in terms of the utility. So despite these benefits to students and society, decision makers and outside agencies may question the utility of data collected by students who are still learning, right, still learning the process for addressing ecological outcomes of interest to their constituencies. And so we were wondering, can data collected by first-year undergraduates be used in decision-making about water quality in urban streams, in this case, Beargrass Creek, and how can the quality of data and the student and community partnership experience be improved to ensure greater utility of the data? So really briefly, the methods and findings, we have 2 sites that we visit, South River Beargrass Creek, Middlefork Beargrass Creek, and we go out in fall and spring. We had 3 different instructors in this study from 2013 to 2019 when, you know, the world shut down and everything changed. So we were collecting various types of data by the students, discharge using a floating object method, temperature, conductivity, and pH using the Vernier models of instruments. And then we were comparing that to the USGS data that's collected and maintained by MSD at these 2 sites. And then we're just comparing the data, the official data to the student data to look for comparisons. This is the part I'm going to go through pretty fast. We're looking at a 1-to-1 line of official data to student data, Pearson correlation, t-test for means and deviations between the USGS or MSD value and the student value. So once again, just highlighting the research question, can these data be used and be useful? And so discharge was, the floating object method was insufficient for estimating discharge, but provided skill building for the students. And so it was important in that way. pH was reasonably close, but might benefit from greater oversight and calibration. So we learned some things about methodologies. And conductivity was perplexing. We expected it to be a stronger correlation, but it had significantly different means, so some work to do there. And then temperature was right on, fairly close and very usable data. I'm gonna play this video that gives a student perspective.
These students are collecting data on water quality, and they've been here now 3 times, so this is their 3rd time. Today they're collecting data on temperature, pH, dissolved oxygen, and a bunch of different parameters related to water quality.
After we collect more data from the other site, we're going to go back to the lab, and that's when we're going to do our testing.
The ultimate goal, as we've been taught of environmental science, is to better the community.
One of the things on our crest is the tree, so we are environmentally friendly school. So we are looking to help the environment just because there are so much.
One of Bellarmine's main things is hospitality. You can't really have hospitality if you don't really the thing that we all share, which is here.
Thomas Merton is a person that we look up to as members of the Bellarmine community, and he had a deep commitment to the environment and to nature. So I think we're enacting exactly the values that he talks about.
Well, I think that this is like right now while we're in the creek, we're kind of the grassroots. We're on the ground, and a lot of people who are studying at Bellarmine they're not going to be on the ground. They can be in positions of power. They can make things happen. They can understand what people on the ground, so to speak, need.
What they're doing today is not necessarily something that they'll ever do again in their lives, but it's really important for them to understand how this kind of work fits in to the choices that they make every day, and that there are going to be people out there doing this work. So having this understanding of how water quality works and what it means will help them to be better decision makers as voters and as community members.
So that was sort of the student perspective before we started engaging with Salt River Watershed Watch. We've more closely aligned with Becca and with Salt River Watershed Watch The data quality we found through this process is high. And so we've adopted the methodologies of Watershed Watch in order to be able to provide the data in a useful way that's needed for the data, the database that Colin was talking about. We also embedded a critical reflection piece that's very important for student understanding of the importance of the work. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Taylor to have her give you her perspective. She actually participated in our inaugural community engaged data collection for Salt River Watershed Watch in the fall. And so she's going to give you her perspective.
Hi, I'm Taylor. I'm a third year at Bellarmine University. I'm actually a psych major with a minor in environmental studies. So I feel like I come into this class with a little bit of different perspectives than a lot of the students in the class. So in 2022 fall semester, I was enrolled in my first environmental class, and we only went to about 2 locations, Middlefork Beargrass Creek and South Fork Beargrass Creek. And we collected data for conductivity, pH, dissolved oxygen, temperature, and nitrogen and phosphorus levels. And we also examined macroinvertebrates to assess pollution and water quality. We also, with Watershed Watch, took samples for E. coli. And unfortunately in my class, we weren't able to see those results, but I was aware that they are posted online, so I will be looking that up soon. I really enjoyed the class. It actually inspired me to join a class with Dr. Mazur, Aquatic Ecosystems, where nearly every week we go to a different location, either a stream. Today we visited our first lake, which was very interesting. And we assess the same parameters. We don't assess E. coli each time, but doing the same tests really gets the repetitiveness down, and it seems to be easier each week to go. It's very interesting to see the different macros and riffles, runs, pulls, all the etc. We use different equipment in this class than we did in my last class, which I like this equipment better. And I've become very fascinated in water ecology, thanks to Dr. Mazur and another one of her colleagues, Beth Bell. So I hope to carry these skills moving forward, and I've even considered, once my school comes down a little bit, that I will become a volunteer with you all. But overall, I had a great time. It was a great experience, and I actually was the one that volunteered to help test for E. coli in the class, not like professionally. But so I really enjoyed it, and I also really enjoy the teachings of Dr. Mazur. She's a great lady, great woman, sorry. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Taylor. And I just highlight, so Taylor's a psychology major with an environmental minor. And so, yeah, so it's even more impressive that she's really engaging in this work. Here she is, I think testing is at the E. coli. I can't remember.
I don't remember. Yeah.
It was conductivity. Yeah. So yeah, we also do macroinvertebrate sampling, which helps students kind of see the little critters and really connect, right? So turtles and crayfish and all the important things that are in these streams. So now we do the Salt River Water Watch training for all of our students, and then they can elect to be volunteers. So it's a way we're hoping to improve the number of volunteers in the organization. And we learned that, find the community partner first. Like, I wish I had done this 10 years ago, right? I wish that Carolyn had sort of like given me a kick to sooner, right? She did, she was prodding, and it was amazing, and she was right. And so thanks to her. So yeah, and then we also provide compensation through donations, right? To help with the financials, because it's important to bring money to the table when you're a university, also trying to support community organizations that are nonprofits, right? Yeah, we're adding our class data to the statewide database, and Colin's doing an internship. He's one of our other students, so it's a pretty amazing relationship, and we're excited to continue it again this semester into the future. Lots of people to thank. All the people at Salt River Watershed Watch Division of Water are wonderful. Liz Todd Byron and our Center for Community Engagement in supporting all of this, and then Bellarmine's leadership as well. So thank you very much.
Comment. One of our class 4 operators has a degree in psychology.
You can go anywhere. That's right. That's so true. Awesome. Well, thank you both so much. And we're going to be doing, I've got on my schedule a whole set of trainings for their upcoming, Bellarmine's upcoming classes this spring. If you're interested as a volunteer, come hang out with me. It's really fun. It was really awesome to connect with the students. And I think the partnership just makes total sense. So thank you to Bellarmine. All right, next we have Nia Rivers. So Nia, wonderful. I work with Nia professionally in my role with Oldham County, and I'm thrilled that she's here to talk about ripple effects. Nia is with the Kentucky Division of Water non-point source section. And come on. And you can just hit that to go to the next slide.
The screen for the Zoom people?
Yeah, I think it. So if you want to see faces.
Oh, perfect. Hi, everyone.
Okay, hopefully we're good on Zoom.
Yeah. Hi, like Becca said, thank you for the introduction. I'm Nia Rivers with the Division of Water. Martha kind of touched on the importance of community engagement, and I'm going to talk a little about ripple effects, which is a photo contest amongst many other really great things in this Kentuckiana area, and hopefully will grow throughout the state. Okay, so the Ripple Effects Project, it started as a regional youth photography contest, as well as other activities. They kind of all work together to help increase community engagement. They help build relationships along our waterways. So this is a collaboration of 20 organizations in this Kentuckiana area with a focus on restoring and protecting healthy waterways by supporting our youth across this area and telling stories about water. So one of the biggest parts of the Ripple Effects Project is the photo contest. So this portion of the project first started spring 2021. It kicked off with a series of virtual photography workshops celebrating Kentuckiana's waterways and emphasizing how to tell a story through visual and language arts. So the photo contest is brought together with a major support from the Louisville Free Public Library, who is kind of our lead organizer, communicator for the photo contest. And the Louisville Free Public Library also offered cameras for loan in support of this project so that all youth had access to cameras across the area. So by mid-June of 2021, of that first year of our photo contest, we received over 200 entries. We were fortunate enough also to have a team of professional photographers, volunteers, judges for the contest. So that year there were 5 winners that were selected in each of our age categories. So the typical kickoff for our photo contest is on Earth Day. So last year for the Earth Day kickoff event, in addition to announcing the start of our photo contest, we also organized an Earth Day paddle and cleanup with a lot of organizational support from River City Paddle Sports. So that paddle was scheduled with a departure from Shawnee Park. I live very close to that boat ramp, and it was going to be a 2.5-mile paddle on the Ohio River up to Sand Island. But unfortunately, due to high water levels and just ensuring the safety of all who were present, we were unable to do that paddle. But a lot of work and effort was put into making this event happen, and we still had a really great turnout. And we modified that event to still include music, hearing from local representatives, residents of the area, as well as a cleanup both at Shawnee Park near that boat ramp and on the Louisville Loop sections up and down on the park, and as well as at the Falls of the Ohio National Wildlife Conservation Area. So this is a photo of John Gage. He's from Homefront, and he's performing some river songs for us. And I'm pretty sure if you look it up on YouTube, you can hear it. It was pretty great. So here are also some photos of the speakers. Former Mayor Greg Fisher, Congressman Yarmouth, Gene West, and Lisa Freeman with the Army Corps of Engineers at the Falls of the Ohio, and some of our great volunteers. So after that Earth Day kickoff, last year we offered an in-person workshop. Thankfully we could that year. So that was for the youth, and the local professional photographers came out, met with those youth, and provided some tips and helpful suggestions that they could use for their photo submissions. So currently we're working on ways to make the contest statewide. We suggested 2023, but we'll see how that goes with possible photo contests in each of Kentucky's river basins, the 7 river basins that Becca highlighted previously. Back to last year's photo contest. So a few months after our workshop, photo submissions were due and for the photography contest, and that was around July 4th. And on that day, we had a celebration in conjunction with the celebration at Waterfront Park. We announced our winners. And then we displayed these photos at our booth at Waterfront Park, where we had printed off those images of winners, honorable mentions, and displayed it for everyone who was not just there for our photo contest, but also there for the 4th of July celebration, which honestly was a really great time having everyone and their family present. As you can tell from some of these pictures, everyone was really stoked to see their art displayed in front of everyone, which was great. So on top of the photo contest that started in 21, this project also has a Kentucky State Fair exhibit titled Ripple Effects, exploring the confluence of art, culture, and the environment along our waterways. So the Ripple Effects project continued this effort at the State Fair this last year, with the project focusing on art, highlighting environmental challenges in and along streams and rivers in Kentucky, and we are expecting to do another exhibit this year at the State Fair as well. So our exhibit at the State Fair last year featured a display created by Louisville's MSD. It showed off rain gardens, slow runoff, and improved water quality. So the Ripple Effects project not only provided information about how to plant your own rain garden, but also offered copies of a children's story called Mandy the Salamander, which is about a tiger salamander who chooses to live only in healthy, clean streams and rivers. More info on Mandy, please ask Colette. So other wonderful components of the Ripple Effects project were our citizen-led science activities, the use of social media to tell stories about water, and our future visioning workshops, as well as our Cocoa Ross rain gauges. So the rain gauges were part of a project to help with citizen-led science. The group and its team members have been giving out rain gauges to locals. We still have a limited supply. And are we giving them out statewide or just still in the Kentuckiana region?
Statewide.
Statewide. So this portion of our project was supported by a grant from NOAA. So COCOROS, just so you know, stands for Community Collaborative Rain, Hail, and Snow Network. Another activity highlighted previously was a workshop that occurred September of 21. That was hosted by Akram Burton. He's from the Kentucky Center for African American Heritage, and that was facilitated by Mary Bride Miller from U of L. It imagined a future climate resilient Louisville. So this workshop also included a presentation on tracking precipitation patterns by Dr. Leslie Ann Dippenay-Drouin. I hope I did it justice. The Ripple Effects project has done a lot of amazing work with the photo contest, our State Fair exhibit, and other activities that we incorporate to help build relationships with communities and the water. Water protection starts with community engagement and working with those communities. And that shift in recognizing that this effective community engagement can have some really truly remarkable results. And that partnerships with the community and environment aren't just something that are nice things that we should probably be doing, but they're a very need to do imperative step in building relationships and helping to continue to create and protect and sustain our healthy waterways. Thank you. Any questions?
No, I don't have a question, but I'd just like to give you a shout out. The way we were introduced to Salt River Water Watch was at the presence at the State Fair right here.
Oh, that's awesome. Perfect.
You know, I think, Nia, I think it really needs to be brought out that we should thank the Louisville Free Public Library for reaching out and enabling us to work with them, because it really is it's a different venue for most of us. You know, we tend to work with the kindred spirits who we already know, and being part of the library system really reaches to all parts of our community. And the neat thing about it is
that Louisville Free Public Library now is working with the Division of Water to really hook up other library districts in the state with their water monitoring program. And so how we can get it out into our public system.
Yes, the library is going to be a pretty big component in how we reach these other basins as we try to get this project to go statewide.
Thank you, Mia. I'll just look quickly on Zoom. I apologize for ignoring the group up here to see if anybody had any questions on Zoom. And let me pull this over here. All right, any questions on Zoom, throw them in there. And I'll look again shortly. But to keep us on track, let's see, we've got one more presentation before dessert. Hang in there. So we have, let's see, we have Michael Mehring, I'm saying.
Andrew Mehring.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was thinking Andrew Mehring. Still probably saying it incorrect. So Andrew is an assistant professor with the Department of Biology at the University of Louisville. And let me get your presentation up here. And let's make sure, I might need to stop sharing. Let's try this. All right. I'm just doing a little switcheroo with the presentation. All right. And let me share on Zoom. Okay. You should be all set. Okay. Thank you, Andrew. And let me know. He's up. Mike's there.
Great.
And Tamara will give you a warning. I will stick with what I said.
Okay, sounds good. Okay. Well, thanks so much for giving me the opportunity to come here. David, thanks for the invitation. I've met some of you before. To those of you who haven't met yet, it's really nice to meet you tonight. So I won't be talking about creeks or streams tonight. I hope that's okay. I'm going to be talking about ponds and wetlands, but they are still an important part of the watershed, and sometimes streams flow through them. And we work within the, oh, I'm sorry.
Is anyone having trouble hearing in the back? You're good?
Okay, sorry. I'll try to remember about the microphone. But yeah, as I was saying, we do work within the Salt River watershed, and these ponds and wetlands that we're studying are within the watershed. Good. Nope. Let's do this. There we go. Okay. Okay. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Pretty good. Okay, great. So I wanted to start out just by talking a little bit about nature-based solutions. Who has heard about this before? Nature-based solutions or natural solutions? Okay. What I'm referring to in this context is actually solutions for climate change that are using our natural ecosystems to actually absorb greenhouse gases or prevent emissions. And they include things like reforestation, or just simply avoiding converting a forest into a shopping mall or a housing development, or protecting wetlands or restoring wetlands. And I think sometimes when you hear people talking about this, you think, okay, that's great, but how much of a difference is that actually going to make? And certainly we have to address other things first, but this is a really important component of actually addressing climate change. And there's been some analyses recently that have been done by climate scientists, ecologists, and biogeochemists that have produced some really startling results by crunching all the data that are available. And by implementing all these different nature-based solutions, such as the examples I cited a couple seconds ago, without actually removing any farmland from production, without taking any timber harvesting land out of production, we could actually achieve an additional 0.3 degrees Celsius of cooling. That might not sound like a lot, but you got to realize that since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, sometime around 1760, we've seen a little bit more than 1 degree Celsius of cooling. So this is actually almost a third of the cooling, of the warming could be accounted for by implementing nature-based solutions globally. Or in addition, over 1/3 of the cost-effective mitigation needed to address, atmospheric carbon dioxide concentrations to limit warming to 2 degrees Celsius by 2100 could be achieved through nature-based solutions. So wetlands are an important component of this, and it's surprising to a lot of people to hear that wetlands can actually store more carbon per square meter than forests. And the way that they do this is actually, if you look at the figure up here behind me, this is actually showing it's megagrams of carbons. That's millions of grams of carbon per hectare. So thinking about that similar to the amount of carbon stored in an acre of land. And we have a couple of different ecosystem types here on this plot. The green part of the bar is talking about the amount of carbon stored above ground in vegetation and trees and things. The brown part is the carbon stored underground, the organic matter stored in soils and sediments. And all these things on the right are actually different types of wetlands. And so look at the size of those brown bars. I mean, that's huge. Basically, these systems are taking carbon from the atmosphere through photosynthesis. Plants are absorbing this atmospheric carbon, and then they're being buried over time. And it's basically locking that carbon in a vault and locking it away from the atmosphere. This is buried carbon that we're talking about in a lot of these wetlands. And you might think, okay, I see boreal forest wetlands or boreal wetlands in this list. And that beautiful picture down in the lower left doesn't look like the kinds of wetlands that we have right here around Louisville. But there was actually another study in Frontiers in Ecology and the Environment that was conducted in the United Kingdom, where they're just looking at small ponds, very much like the ponds that we have all over Jefferson County and all throughout the Salt River watershed or the Salt River Basin. And they also found that these small backyard ponds could store more carbon, actually remove more carbon and store more carbon than forests in some cases. So this is an important tool that we have in our arsenal to actually combat climate change. Most vegetated wetlands, as I mentioned, are carbon dioxide sinks, and that's because through photosynthesis, plants are actually removing carbon dioxide, converting it into sugar, and then transforming it into more complex molecules that build plant tissue. And then they grow at a faster rate than they decompose. And so that carbon actually gets buried in the sediments. However, at the same time, a lot of wetlands are our largest natural emitters of methane, and methane is a really potent greenhouse gas. Now, a lot of that seems to be related to algae and algal blooms. And the difference with algae is they are photosynthesizing. They're also removing carbon dioxide, right? But when they die, they decompose very quickly. And so all that carbon that they removed gets sent right back to the atmosphere. So it's not really a net gain in a lot of cases. 5 minutes, thanks. And you can see on this graph here, it's showing chlorophyll concentration on the x-axis and then methane emissions on the y-axis. And you can see there's a strong relationship between algal biomass and methane emissions in lakes. So these small ponds, why should we care about them? We're talking about the smallest of these ponds with an area of less than 1,000 square meters, make up about 9% of global standing water. However, the ones that are impacted by fertilizer runoff tend to emit more greenhouse gases. And they may, that as a result, they might account for, even though they're only 9% of the total standing water, they might account for up to 15 and 41% of global carbon dioxide and methane emissions from standing water. So what we're trying to ask as a group is, can we improve the ability to rapidly detect which ponds and wetlands in the landscape might be greenhouse gas emissions hotspots or have harmful algal blooms versus ones that are healthy wetlands? And that's where this project was born. We came up with the title, It's Not Easy Being Green, Rapid Assessment of Wetland Carbon Source Sink Status Through Remote Sensing. And we work together. I like to think that we work together as a well-oiled machine, but we all have sort of different roles in this project. And Dr. Andrea Gahn actually is sitting here in the audience, and she is leading the charge on remote sensing and also in a lot of the citizen science and survey work that we're doing. And then she's working with Cassidy Haynes and Madison Sika, who have actually made a poster that's up there on the back wall. If you haven't taken a look, try to check it out before you leave. And then David Brown, who's also helping with remote sensing. And then they're in the Department of Geographic and Environmental Sciences at University of Louisville. And in the Department of Biology, there's me, and then also PhD candidate Mark Tierney and Jacob Webb, who are doing more of the chemistry, greenhouse gas emissions, and invertebrate work in a lot of these different ponds. And so we're measuring greenhouse gas emissions in about 30 small ponds in Jefferson County. You can see us out there in an inflatable canoe with a floating flux chamber and a greenhouse gas analyzer. And a couple of different methods. We measure the amount of greenhouse gases that are coming off the surface of the wetland or being absorbed with floating flux chambers. We also measure the amount of greenhouse gases and the invertebrates that are living in the sediments, the amount of greenhouse gases moving from the sediment into the water. And we catch bubbles, you can call them pond farts, little bubbles of methane coming off the bottom of the pond. We capture with these bubble traps. And then for larger wetlands, we're starting to use something called eddy covariance to measure emissions from, at larger scales. And there's a couple different states of stable states in ponds. You're about to raise the 3. Am I close? Okay, there it is. Thanks. No, I'll be, it won't take that much longer. But ponds can exist in a lot of different states, right? We have some healthy states for ponds where they're dominated by emergent plants, like you can see up on the upper left there. And then we also have, you can see a pond that's dominated by submerged vegetation, like, you know, the picture you can see on the upper right. Those are generally healthy conditions, you know, but unfortunately you also have some other kind of stable states that ponds can exist in that are not so good. Algae dominated, like we can see there on the lower left, where, you know, you can see this algal bloom, that green color of the water. And then on the lower right, we also have some ponds that are dominated by floating vegetation. And I know if you're anywhere within the Salt River Basin, you have seen ponds covered in duckweed, right? And that's exactly what I'm talking about. Is floating vegetated dominated systems. Just from some of our data that we've collected, this is looking at methane emissions, and this is grams of methane per square meter per day. And ponds that are covered in duckweed on the left, and that green column, have substantially more methane coming out of them than ponds that are just open water on the right. I mean, it's a huge difference in these two systems and how they're functioning related to the climate and greenhouse gas emissions. So the question is, can we detect these with satellites and drones? And so because they all are green, right, we should be able to detect that signal even from outer space or from drones flying lower in the atmosphere. And they all have slight differences in the colors of green. You all, if you've seen a duckweed covered pond, you know it has that sort of like the green mint chocolate chip ice cream kind of color to it. I mean, those wavelengths of light are things that, and Dr. Gahn could, I'm the last person you want to talk to about remote sensing. She'd be the person to talk to about these kinds of things. But those types of wavelengths of light and different colors are things we might actually be able to detect from a distance. So what we do is on a day when a satellite is flying over, and this is usually, well, the ones we're interested in come over every 5 days. If it's a nice clear day, 3 to 5 teams of people will run out to as many ponds as possible. 30 to 40 is the target. And then we run out, and you can see Maddie actually here with a pole and a bottle of water collecting a water sample, similar to what a lot of you all probably do when you're sampling streams. And then we bring those samples back to the lab. Usually Mark Tierney analyzes them for chlorophyll content. And we try to relate that chlorophyll concentration, which tells us how much algae was in the water, to the amount of greenness that was detected by those satellites. And so one of our long-term goals then is to be able to actually scan the landscape and very quickly detect harmful algal blooms, or potentially detect, you know, which ponds are covered in duckweed, which ones have aquatic vegetation, and which ones might be hot spots of carbon storage or carbon emissions. And then the other long-term goal that hopefully some of you would be interested in as well is we're just trying to generally enhance the knowledge of ponds and wetland management throughout the river basin. And again, the poster by Maddie Sika and Cassidy Haynes is in the back, and we're really interested in hearing people's feedback. There's a link, there's a QR code that links to a survey that we're going to be releasing in Jefferson County very soon. And we're trying to, with this survey that QR code links to, we're trying to assess public perceptions of pond services and dish services. And, you know, basically trying to understand, do we recognize the indicators of a healthy wetland? Like, for example, if you're presented with this picture here, if you see a wetland like this, would you say, okay, that looks like a healthy wetland because I see lots of emergent vegetation, the water looks clear, it's not choked with algae. Do we all recognize those characteristics? So we are actually going to be posting signs in, I think, up to 10 parks, maybe. We're not sure exactly how many we'll be able to post them in, that link to the survey and around various ponds that people visit in places like Cherokee Park, other locations. And then through that survey, we're actually asking participants to also take a photo and upload a photo to the survey website. And then we will have, you know, experts or people who have monitoring experience and are able to actually evaluate or are used to evaluating wetlands. We'll also look at those photos. So we can compare the perceptions of just passersby to the perceptions of people who actually understand wetland ecosystem function. So through all this, we're trying to accomplish a lot of different things. We want to be able to rapidly detect potential problems in the landscape. A lot of people have ponds in their backyard that they could manage in a way that might actually create ways of storing more carbon. We can detect, you know, harmful algal blooms, hopefully, through some of these efforts, and just generally also hopefully educate the public about wetlands and wetland management. And I'm sorry I probably went over, but anyway, that's it. So with that, thanks a lot for listening. Okay, at 15.
I have a question for you. I mean, so we all know that kind of financial incentives are the best way to make change. see a lot of environmental equipment, so they're switching from harvesting to selling carbon credits and keeping their forest healthy. I was wondering if there's any shot at like keeping healthy wetlands as a carbon credit. Like financial incentives to build.
Yeah, I'm not sure if everyone heard that, but he was talking about basically the person in the back. And I'm sorry, I don't know your. Okay, Brian was asking that about, we have in certain places basically carbon credits for taking a wood lot, and instead of cutting down the trees, you're actually getting credit for just leaving them standing for carbon storage. And if there's a similar system for wetlands right now, and I don't know that there is. I mean, there definitely could be. I mean, because especially the wetlands are difficult because we're still trying to understand exactly when they actually function as a big source or a sink. And it takes monitoring to do that, so I think that we'd have to get better at actually recognizing the characteristics I talked about today and saying, this wetland actually is one that deserves a credit versus this one actually isn't really doing us any good because it's, it's been receiving too much fertilizer runoff. And right, we could actually hopefully gather these data a little bit better. And I mean, I think that even the county and the state could protect their wetlands and treat them as credits in some cases, if they're being properly managed.
Are you by chance tracking natural wetlands versus man-made wetlands?
So we've been, most of the wetlands, unfortunately, I didn't even talk about wetland loss. I mean, we've lost a lot of our natural wetlands. And so and right around Jefferson County where our work is concentrated, most of these are built ponds. We're trying to incorporate more natural wetlands as a comparison because generally those tend to be the stronger sinks. But I mean, we've seen some wetlands in, like, for example, in Iroquois Park that are potentially pretty strong sinks as well, depending on the amount of vegetation they have and how they're doing as far as algae and duckweed. But so we're trying to branch out and incorporate more sites, but for now it's been mostly built systems.
Right, because our post-construction requirement, wetlands aren't optional, so.
I think that it's definitely wouldn't be too difficult to show that, but are you actually talking about building stormwater wetlands or? Yeah, and I mean, a lot of times stormwater wetlands incorporate vegetation, which is one of the most important, to slow down the flow of water. I actually used to study stormwater management with biofilters and wetlands. And so that vegetation that's incorporated into the wetland to slow down the flow of water and help to remove nutrients is also probably the most important component of capturing carbon. So yeah, I mean, if you have a vegetated wetland, you could measure that directly.
Colette's point, a lot of development trends, Jefferson, east of building the prior converted stuff, drain tile, resettlement, right, so it's grandfather. We're exchanging that opportunity to build the green design. He's been around for 2 years, but it's not often used. So if there was actually the case where somebody could identify somebody's done a stormwater constructed wetland, and you guys pick up that on a farm, I think that could be used. That's an underutilized practice. Fair to say, MSD offers development community.
No, that's a great point. I mean, just talking about, I'm sorry, I've been forgetting to repeat the questions, but, actually looking at some of these wetlands that have been built and how they're providing a lot of services and actually being able to monitor those directly. And yeah, I mean, I didn't even mention how many other services wetlands provide and how every time one is built, we're replacing some of what we've lost. And I mean, Kentucky has lost 85% of its wetlands since, I don't know, 1700 or sometime around there estimated. So we're really far from getting back to that. But every one that gets restored, if it's a healthy functioning wetland, is really important. It might have a primary goal of stormwater management, but it's also providing a lot of other services. You have a question in the back?
On the other side, there are a lot of natural wetlands that are obscured by tree cover, and that'd be in areas like on floodplains. Ashes for the Spirit Center has their 2 restored wetlands and can't actually see unless there's leaf off. And so, wondering how you sort of think about those, and are you capturing the natural wetlands that are still remnant within the watershed?
Yeah, those are really interesting sites. That's a good question for Dr. Gond, but we try to, we have to use, well, did you want to address that or you want me to go ahead? Yeah, I mean, we are sort of limited in some cases. When we have leaf on, whenever you're looking at remote sensing data, it's kind of in a big grid of pixels of blocks of land. And sometimes we can't use certain pixels because half of it's tree canopy. That's a good thing. I mean, that's what you really want. But we're sometimes limited to just looking at the space in the center, that's not being overlaid by tree canopy. So there's some sites that we can't actually monitor as well as we want to because of what you just mentioned. But we try to find ones that have at least one little square that we can get a satellite data from.
So what I'm off of that is, are you also looking at seasonal wetlands, flooded forests, that sort of thing, or just the pictures are basically showing open water, vegetation around the edges kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So for example, Caperton Swamp is a site that we'd like to get out to, and we tried to sample there in December, but it was totally dry. So when the water returns, and we can measure gas exchange with soils as well, and we'll try to go back out there as soon as there's water again. So far, that will be the first site that's sort of semi-seasonal. I don't know if Caperton is truly seasonal or if it was just exceptionally dry, but yeah, those are interesting sites. They can do some really strange things with seasonal wetlands because when they dry down, all of a sudden you're adding a lot of oxygen back into the soil, and it's counterintuitive to what you might think. But when you add oxygen into that, that vault of carbon, you suddenly start to actually remove some of that. Some of that organic matter gets consumed because the oxygen allows the microbes to work more quickly. But they're also important sites of storage, but they can do unusual things when they dry out like that. That's the other thing, the other reason not to drain wetlands. It's like once you drain it, all that stored carbon, it can suddenly get converted back into CO2 really quickly. Thanks.
So we're gonna have a quick break and some time for dessert. Maybe we'll do a closer to 7:35, get back on track mostly. So for those on Zoom, take a break. We'll meet back at 7:35, and I'll look at the chat for any questions. For everybody else, get up, stretch your legs. We'll have, I think, some cake. That's ready. Restrooms go out the door around the corner to your right, and we'll meet back. I haven't been on. Oh, go ahead. You're fine. I'll take a look.
Our next door prize is live native willow stakes.
And the winner is, if you want to know how to plant them, come find me.
Ellie Miller. And the stakes are there along with instructions. Yes. And finally, we have a Coco Roz rain gauge. And that goes to Ray Hart. Yes.
All right, thank you, Perry and Susan. And we are gonna keep rolling here. So if you're ready, our next presentation is from MSD. We've got Colette Easter and Izzy Voltier. Okay, awesome. Let me get your presentation up and share the screen on Zoom. And I saw a question on Zoom come through. I will try to get that answered for you. So if you send me a question, just know I'll catch it later. Okay. All right, I think you're all set.
I'm so impressed, like so impressed. I always have a technical fail no matter when I do a presentation.
Tamara is going to be the timekeeper starting now, and you can just push through. Then you should be.
Okay, so for those of you that don't know me, my name is Colette Easter. I am the MS4 Program Administrator for the Metropolitan Sewer District. And today I am honored to have our co-op. She is a University of Cincinnati student, and she's been working with us for the last 3 years. So I'm going to actually let her take the lead on most of the information tonight, because she's been helping me with our 319 grant funding. The first thing I wanted to do was just thank you all for being here, but also thank you for your time and your efforts in being a part of making our waterways cleaner and healthier for the next generation. I've got a couple in the back row there that we're trying to make it better for, right? So this is a big deal. It's a big part of what I do for my job, but if we don't have you, we don't get to move the needle a little farther, right? So tonight we just wanted to give you guys an update on some of the efforts that are occurring in Jefferson County for our watershed planning efforts. So obviously these are smaller projects, and you guys are working on a very large watershed, but these are just some little efforts that are happening here, right here in Jefferson County. They are new for us, for MSD. We, the second one we're gonna talk about is actually our first watershed plan ever. We've been working on water quality for, well, we've had the permit since 1999, and this is our first big effort. So the last couple of years has been a big deal for us. So this is just a little bit of an update. You guys have questions, and then I'm going to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing and helping us collect the data so that we can make the water a little better. So from now.
All right. So I'm going to start with this graphic. Colette and I love this graphic. It really shows the watershed planning process, and it shows that it's by no means a linear process. It's very iterative. It's constantly changing. You're constantly building new partnerships. You're constantly collecting new data, picking new mitigation opportunities, implementing, and then over and over again. So why a watershed plan? This is really a good way to inventory the watershed needs and the different ways that we can help address them. It's a way to identify potential sources of non-point source pollution, and then, like I said, come up with different solution techniques. So this is actually a graphic we had made recently, just tailoring a watershed more to here in Louisville. So, and then with the watershed plan, it opens the door for 319 grant funding. So this is administered by the Kentucky Division of Water. It's EPA 319 funding, and it's a 60-40 match. So in order to use 319 grant funding, you have to have a watershed plan in place. And then, so we're using 319 funding to develop the watershed plans, and then anybody can apply for these funds to implement projects in watersheds that have a watershed plan. So just to orient ourselves a little bit, this is Jefferson County. We have 11 watersheds, and then we are working on 2 different watershed plans. So we've done Middlefork, Beargrass Creek, and then I'll talk about first, we're doing Mill Creek currently. So for the Mill Creek watershed plan, we've been able to kind of take some lessons learned from the Middlefork Beargrass Creek plan and implement those into our approach for Mill Creek. So we've really been working on understanding the watershed needs. So different behaviors in the community. There's a huge environmental justice component that's unique to this grant. So I'll talk about that in a few slides. And then just the long-term needs of the watershed. So we're applying lessons learned, like I said, adapting to urban challenges because most of the watersheds in Jefferson County, actually all of them are urban. And then we're really focusing on communication this time around. So Mill Creek doesn't have those citizen-based groups that Middlefork does. So we were really lucky with Middlefork to start with that one and just hit the ground running with those groups and what they thought we could start addressing different challenges with. But in Mill Creek, we kind of have to build up from the ground. So building relationships and partnerships is huge for this watershed plan. So just to give you an idea, Mill Creek is on the western portion of Jefferson County along the Ohio River. We have 8 monitoring locations, 2 of which are co-located with MS4 long-term monitoring network locations. And then the other 6 were kind of put in so that we could capture the bottom of each sub-watershed. One of the unique things about watershed planning is you identify the sub-watersheds, or you prioritize the sub-watersheds. So being able to collect data for each of those helps us prioritize, pick where we want to put projects in the ground first. So collecting data, this is the sampling parameter suite that we're collecting. It's a little bit different from Middlefork because with Middlefork, we had Division of Water collect data, and then MSC followed up and collected data. So this is the first time around that we're collecting the organics for a 319 grant, but we're collecting all of these on a monthly basis. So bacteria, that's your E. coli, organics, sediment flow, and then field data. And then we'll do 5 samples in 30 days in either May or June for that recreation season. So like I mentioned earlier, the environmental justice component is unique for Mill Creek. We partnered with the University of Louisville Resilience Justice Project, specifically Dr. Tony Arnold and his fellows for this effort. So they bring a really unique perspective to this grant and this watershed planning effort because we get to see things from a different lens. So they're all about transforming the inequitable conditions of the watershed, empowering the residents, and then making sure that we aren't green or preventing green gentrification and displacement of vulnerable communities. So making sure that the solutions that we want to put in the ground aren't going to in turn harm the community, instead working with them to come up with those. So with the environmental justice component in the regular grant, it's kind of a parallel data collection. So on the left side of this slide, it's all your basic 319 watershed planning steps. So we got the grant approved in February 2022, working on a communications and engagement plan. We hold monthly partnership meetings. We're constantly in coordination with the state, sampling. We've had 2 community engagement events. We held 2 trash cleanups. So that's more along the lines of just watershed planning. And then the right side talks about the environmental justice data that they collect. So they built a fellows team. They studied and inventoried the watershed. They're developing a framework, and they're really just getting in contact with the community and identifying what those needs are. They held individual interviews with community residents. So just learning what they think are the issues in the watershed and what they think could be done to fix it. And then they're also going to come around and do a policy analysis to see where policies can kind of change. So that's pretty much all from Mill Creek. I'm going to give it to Colette so she can talk about Middlefork.
Any questions about Mill Creek? We're really excited about Mill Creek. It's been a really fun project so far. Been really eye-opening for me, right? How important communication really is and understanding who our audience is. And so having Dr. Arnold, and I got to go back to this photo. Wait, so this is how I see Dr. Arnold often, and I love this about him. So we did a presentation for our external field day, which is something MST puts on every year. And that usually means I have a lot of engineers or some contractors there. They're all dressed up in their khaki pants and their suits. And Dr. Arnold and his fellows came in their tank tops with their resilience justice on. And one of my counterparts was like, who did you invite, Colette? I'm like, that's my co-presenter. It was amazing. And they were just really well received from the community as well. So the engineering community is pretty invested in this effort as well. So I'm really proud of them for that and excited that they are partnered with us. So Mill Creek Watershed in particular has had a long history of trying to establish you guys, right? Trying to establish a really active citizen-based group to work on topics like improving water quality, increasing access to water for a community benefit. Oh, now I don't even know what the question is. Oh, okay. What are we why are we addressing green gentrification? What was the specific question? So I could. How are we doing that? Okay, so how are we addressing green gentrification? So knowing that we had a challenge with identifying a citizen-based group to help us with moving the needle and increasing that communication and engagement activity, that's why we partnered with Dr. Arnold. So Dr. Arnold actually has done a lot of these resilience justice studies throughout the country. Some pretty big ones were in Southern California, as well as he's done a lot of work here in Jefferson County as well. So that's why we partnered with him. And so we're really leaning on him for his expertise, but also another way to engage the next generation in the topic. So the other thing is that we are really trying to focus with the Mill Creek watershed planning efforts on how do we engage with students in the watershed as well. To be honest with you, Jefferson County public school system is challenging for us to partner with, right? They have a lot of their own internal strife right now, lots of challenges that they've got in their own administration, but trying to really engage the students and showing them what career opportunities there are out there for them. It doesn't have to mean you go to college either, right? There's lots of opportunities for really full, fulfilling jobs in the water sector that you can do right out of high school. So that is a part of the conversation with this watershed planning effort as well. But like I said, our first watershed plan was in Middlefork of Beargrass Creek. One of the reasons we selected that particular watershed to start with, because like I said, MSD hadn't done this before, nor had our partners, but we already had this really active citizen-based group that has been doing a lot of sampling in Middlefork Beargrass Creek for 15, 20 years actually. So that is why we selected that one to start with. And then we've been learning from that and trying to build on what we know for Mill Creek. So the Mill Creek watershed plan was approved last March. So yay, and thank you. There were so many people involved in getting that particular plan approved. Some big challenges were obviously COVID in general was just a challenge because it happened right in the middle of our, when we wanted to have community engagement activities and we wanted to get people more involved, and we weren't able to do that. And we went virtual on a lot of those engagement activities. But it also opened up some opportunities and looking at using GIS and survey tools to help us with getting feedback from the public that maybe isn't in a live setting. So that was a real positive part of the process. And we still were able to find a lot of value in that engagement, those engagement moments to develop the BMP plan, so the best management plan. So the plan that's in the best management plan, because we like acronyms, because it's the government in general, we just like acronyms, but within the watershed plan is the best management plan. And that plan really outlines what key activities we've identified as a group to actually start moving the needle and start addressing non-point source pollution. So, oh man, I gave away my own thunder. Dang it. What's the #1 pollutant of concern when we talk about non-point source pollution here in Jefferson County? It's sediment, right? E. coli is obviously a big problem. We monitor it a lot at MSD. We monitor it a lot. It's a big part of what we do as a primary business function. But when we talk about water quality in our streams, here in Jefferson County, sediment is a big challenge. So anybody know what the #1 contributor to sediment in our creeks are here in Jefferson County? Development, right? What do when you start developing a new piece of property? You take all the stabilization away, right? Take all the trees out. And no matter how much I preach to the developers to do phasing, that is not how they develop. So the next phase of the plan for Middlefork Beargrass Creek is actually to do a deeper dive into the sediment conversation. We know that the data that we collected during phase 1 really did not represent what's happening in the watershed. So we were able to identify that. So actually, Dr. Mahoney is going to talk a little bit about what we're working on, but we're hoping to partner with some of the students there, as well as Dr. Mahoney, of trying to really understand where the sediment load's really coming from. We obviously have a good understanding of where the construction part of this conversation is. I have lots of regulation around that. I do enforcement and I talk to the development community all the time, but there's still other natural sources and other point sources within, or not really non-point sources in the watershed that we can put in projects in the future to help reduce sediment load and improve water quality as well as ecosystems. So we talked a lot about tonight the engagement of students and citizens on collecting water quality data. So one of the things that we've all been talking about a lot is how do we make sure that the data that you guys spend your volunteer hours on is something that we can use to make decisions, something that we can use to submit to the state to be able to get this alternative funding, right? Because this is an above and beyond effort of what I do every day with the MS4 permit. So all of these efforts are above and beyond to hopefully move the needle faster, right? That's what we're trying to do. So Becca and I have been talking about working on adjusting some of the things that actually you touched on earlier of how do we make sure that our procedures are something that will be acceptable for the state to be able to use that data, because they've got to keep a certain criteria, right? Are we doing calibrations correctly? Do we have duplicates? Are we making sure that we're doing the equipment blanks? All the things that are required for me when I do the MS4 data collection, I can teach all of you to do the same thing. And so we just got to get that written down. So just one of the things that we want to work on next steps for Middlefork is to put that program together. So I'm going to ask all of you to be engaged in that conversation. But that way we also can utilize your guys' efforts to increase the value of the monitoring for these watershed plans in the future. I don't know what the last bullet's for. What did I miss? Oh, okay. So we're making a website finally. We are putting together a watershed website specific for this conversation so that hopefully we can increase engagement, but also give people an opportunity to give us a feedback loop. So one of the big parts of the communication plan, especially in Mill Creek, is it's not just about me getting up here and telling you stuff, right? You listen to me. I want to know what you want to see done. I want to know what problems you're observing, because the reality is that MSD is a really small part of the solution. We can only do so much, but the community is the eyes and ears and the driving force of what we actually invest in the future. So trying to put that website together has oddly been difficult, but I'm almost there. And so keep an eye out for that and share with your friends. We want to hear what you want to see happen in these watersheds. And that's all I have. You don't have to clap. She's done a phenomenal job down here. She's like, because yeah, I'm the one that'll talk forever, so I don't want to do that.
I know, and I hate to cut people off. Questions?
I'm trying to get my head wrapped around gentrification.
Okay.
Also, so what is it that you're finding as a problem? Gentrification, gentrification. describe what that problem is.
Okay, so the question was about what is the problem with green gentrification, specifically in Mill Creek, right?
Yes.
So Dr. Arnold's perspective is obviously much more global, right? We know that we have common goals, right? Of we want to improve water quality. We want to create access for people to be able to play in the creeks because, I mean, that's what I'm trying to do. I want, how many of you know about, you know, MSD signs that are everywhere that say, don't get in the water? My goal by the end of my career is to take those away. I'd really like them to go away because I grew up in the water, right? From the perspective though of green gentrification is when we start making investments in open spaces and in more accessible waters, you create the opportunity of displacing lower income families and lower income parts of your community. So just, it's not that we want to stop the momentum. We don't want to not improve the water quality. We don't want to not create access. We just want to be conscious of the communities that we are impacting when we start putting investment in those areas. Does that answer your question?
Give me an example of when you make a decision to say, you don't want to clean up this street too much, but it might impact property value.
So that's not actually the approach at all. So the question was, give an example of when do you make the decision not to invest because you're going to impact property values. What it has more to do with is understanding the people that live there today and what are their needs. So a good example is Sylvania Park. So that area in Mill Creek has a lot of historic challenges on what can thrive in that particular community. So there is a park, Sylvania Park is there. It has a community center. It has been shut down for a long time for multiple reasons, right? Funding for the park system, but also that particular community has had historic challenges at the park, right? They had a community baseball league and it had to get shut down and they couldn't do it anymore because they were getting into arguments with themselves and the police were coming often. So that just went away, right? So when we talk about green gentrification in particular, if we put in a big investment in a park or in an access point, you could, you're right, increase property values and then drive out someone who can't afford their own home, right? So it's not that we're going to stop what we're doing, but we need to be conscious of where investments are and can you create opportunities to stabilize that community and build them up within and not just come in and, you know, change the landscape completely. Yep.
So it's possible if you make the area very attractive to people, you would invite new development that could displace the existing residents.
Yeah, that's one of the challenges, one of many challenges. And that is part of what Dr. Arnold and their team are looking at. But there's other challenges too about how do you make sure that regulation fits investment so that you're not creating other economic and socioeconomic challenges. Because, you know, every decision has a reaction. So we have to just pay attention.
But on the other hand, if you improve the stream, you improve the quality of life. Watershed.
Correct.
And Mill Creek watershed, which is actually a life watershed. I think it's one of the watersheds with the most publicly owned land. That was down. So I'm still having trouble figuring out how they see the concern. Should our concern be protect the stream as best we can, make those decisions to protect the stream? And you're saying
We just don't want to do it in a vacuum.
You're saying we need to be concerned about how it might impact the community. If I use the same arguments in education, should we not try to improve all of our schools, or should we just improve some of our schools? Since that affects the community, every public investment I can think of, make the argument could impact transportation, could impact changes in land use. I'm not sure exactly how we would make a decision not to. I just can't imagine us making a decision not to improve the stream if we have the opportunity to improve the stream quality because we have.
So,
yeah. I'm sorry, I don't want to be rude. I'm gonna have to cut us off.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think this is a wonderful conversation. Maybe we can have Dr. Arnold here next year to talk more about this as you get into it. Because I think this is a wonderful conversation that we should have. but
I
we
just
don't
want to say that this is the preliminary phase, right? We're in the planning phase. So to make sure you have all of the information. So that's where we're at right now. But I agree, Dr. Arnold will do a much better job because this is the part that I've asked him to do. But thank you for having us, and yeah, thanks for what you do.
Okay, and let's see. I'm gonna stop sharing now. And next we have Dr. Tyler Mahoney, who is with U of L. And Tyler, see if you can share your screen.
Okay.
And Dr. Mahoney is going to talk about sedimentation in Middlefork, Beargrass Creek. So we're going to keep this sedimentation conversation going.
Yeah, that was a great segue. Can you all see this okay?
Oh, sorry. Hold on. I think something happened
Okay.
on my end. So Zoom can. Sorry, what?
Or you say you stop sharing the screen?
I did. But I also, let's see, how do I?
Oh, it's my fault.
No, not your fault at all.
No, I did. You were doing amazing.
I think, all right, let's try this. I might have to. Let's see, I messed you up now, Tyler. Okay, I think
No
what
worries.
I think what I have to do. Let's see, that's still up there. How do I stop? Because I stopped sharing. Let me just unplug it real quick. See what happens.
I'll try to share one more time.
Okay, cool. We're back to baseline here, I think. It might just be catching up.
See it on my laptop. Do you want to plug my laptop up?
Yeah, let's see what happened. Because my screen still thinks it's sharing when it's not.
Can the other folks at home see my screen okay?
Okay, thank you, camera. All right, so
Perfect.
are you shared on Zoom? Everybody can see you on Zoom? Yes, thank you for the feedback. Okay. Oh, goodness.
Oh, I just turned it off.
Let's see. Try that. All right, so I'm gonna mute myself and then we'll make sure we can hear you, Tyler.
Sounds good. Cool. Can everyone hear me okay? Thumbs up if you can.
Okay. All right, we're gonna make sure this volume works. Tyler, if you want to go ahead and then try to.
Can you all hear me okay? I'm assuming the folks at home can hear okay, but maybe.
Yeah, no, we're.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
So
Camera, is it all good?
Zoom can hear you fine. Let me see.
Sorry, I'm making this more complicated. I thought that
I've got two audios on. Oh, I know what's going on now, I think.
How's it going? Any luck?
No, not yet. Is your sound all the way up?
Yeah.
Oh, that's, what am I doing?
Oh, maybe section up. All right. All right, go ahead, Tyler.
Testing. Anything?
It's just not very loud.
We'll just roll with it and then we're good.
Okay. Well, hopefully I can talk really loud and maybe you all can hear me in the back, but if not, then it's all good. We can maybe have a conversation another day or something. But thanks so much for hosting and for having me today. My name is Tyler Mahoney. I'm a new assistant professor at the University of Louisville. And what I'm going to talk about is some research that we're doing in the Middlefork of Beargrass Creek and transport. And, this kind of from everything that Colette was saying, and this which is, kind of killing two birds with one stone. It's for, intent of developing new watershed plans and potentially applying to new 319 programs down the line. But also we have the intent of just, understanding better how sediment transports in the watershed. So with that being said, just a little bit of info about me. So I've only been at U of L for about a year and a half or so now, but I actually graduated from UK. So it's kind of interesting. My research is really focused on a couple of things. Recently, I've been working on trying to understand floods out in smaller streams, for example, in Eastern Kentucky. That's what we're doing. The other hat that I wear is trying to understand sediment transport within streams in Central Kentucky. So that's what I did back in Lexington and what I'm doing now by increasing the monitoring and modeling of how sediment transports through stream networks throughout the inner bluegrass region. And so this project is what I'm going to talk a little bit about today. And here's an outline of this presentation. So first I'll just give a very quick overview of some of the problems with sediment in Kentucky. Then I'll go over some of the methods that we're using at U of L to identify the sources of that sediment, talk about our case in the Middlefork, and then talk about some preliminary results, and they are very preliminary right now. We've just really started data collection. So it'll be interesting to see this maybe in a bit more developed state here in about a year or so. And then finally, what I'll talk about is maybe a couple of opportunities for volunteers to get involved if this sparks interest in anyone. And right now it's still in the development phase. So if you all have ideas about how to contribute to the project in any way, I'd be absolutely delighted to hear those. So I guess the question is, why are we focused on erosion and sedimentation? And Colette said it really well. Sediment is one of the leading causes of water quality degradation in the state of Kentucky, and really it's one of the leading causes of water quality degradation throughout the United States and throughout the world. And this is a good example here of why that is. So this is showing a small stream in Eastern Kentucky where there's been a lot of bank failure and excessive erosion, which is eating away the roads. But that's not the only problem that we see with sediment. Here, this is showing the Salt River coming into the Ohio River up in Covington. And you can see really clearly this sediment plume that's coming in. And this has some really important implications ecologically, right? So, sediment can clog the gills of fish. It can limit their ability to hunt. It can also limit the ability of primary producers to conduct photosynthesis. And so really, the problems that sediment causes, they can ripple through the entire food chain. Furthermore, sediment can fill up reservoirs, such as being shown in this picture here. It can clog up drinking water intakes. And then also, it can impact marinas. So this photo here is showing the marina down next to Towhead Island. The photo on the left was taken back in June. I actually took that photo, and it's maybe a little bit hard to see, but if you look at the surface of the water here, you can see that sediment has actually been deposited and is all the way up to the surface of the water now. And then I think David Wicks took a picture about 4 months later and sent it to me. And now you can see that the entire marina is almost completely filled up with sediment, right? And so, yeah, this is a pretty big issue. But, you know, the next question is, how do we actually identify where sediment is coming from? You know, one difficulty with sediment is that, you know, the source of the sediment is sometimes hard to pinpoint. And definitely, as Colette was mentioning, in Jefferson County and in the Middlefork of Beargrass Creek, construction is a big contributor to sediment. And this is being shown in this photograph on the right here. And really what you can see, if you look really closely at the photo, is there's some overland runoff that's coming off of this active construction site. And this is clear water on the right, just coming out of a storm drain, which is mixing with super muddy water that's coming into the channel laterally. And so you can see, you know, specifically where this sediment's coming from. Also in Kentucky, you know, we have lots of agriculture. And so agriculture, whenever it's not properly managed, can be a big contributor to sediment, as well as nutrients and herbicides and pesticides and a bunch of other things. So really, you know, managing the sediment is really important. However, you know, there's a lot of watershed out there, especially in like the Middlefork of Beargrass Creek. And, you know, pinpointing exactly where the sediment comes from might be even more difficult at the watershed scale. So, you know, we can also have sediment that's coming from banks, sediment that's coming from the bed, sediment that's coming out of storm sewers, sediment coming from other places, parking lots. And the idea is that, you know, if we can understand better where sediment is coming from, then we can try to better understand where to target remediation to reduce those sediment loads. And so there's a couple of emerging technologies that folks are applying nowadays to essentially try to understand from within the stream network where sediment's coming from. And these are a couple of techniques that my lab has been focused on recently. The first one's called sediment fingerprinting, and that's being shown by Matthew in the photo on the left, and then our traps, how we're collecting sediment data. That's what's being shown there. And then the other method is via sediment transport monitoring and hysteresis analysis using sensors. So what is sediment fingerprinting? This is using some type of unique chemical, physical, or biological property of the sediment to trace back that sediment to its source by looking at the quality of the sediment that comes out of a watershed and then comparing it to a potential upstream sediment source. And so the way that we do this is we have sediment traps that are placed in the middle of the creek and allow water and sediment to flow in through the nozzle in the front. This nozzle is pretty small, and then the area of the trap opens up quite a bit. So what that does is it causes the velocity of the water and the velocity of the sediment in that trap to really slow down a whole lot, which essentially traps the sediment in the tube, and then we can take it back to our lab and analyze it. So yeah, whenever we take it back to the lab and analyze it, we can then compare that chemical, physical, biological property of the fluid to the chemical, physical, biological property of a source sediment. For example, this might be a construction site, or maybe it's something else. So this is the idea of using sediment fingerprinting to understand where sediment comes from. The second method that we're implementing is using sensor data to infer the sources of sediment in the creek. And we're all pretty familiar with a hydrograph, but another thing that we can also have is we can use something called a turbidity sensor as a proxy for the sediment concentration in the creek. And we can also get something that looks like a hydrograph, but what we call a sedigraph. And the relationship of the hydrograph and the sedigraph is actually quite important, because what we can do is we can infer where sediment comes from based on where how the peak of turbidity lies with relation to the peak of discharge. So what we can actually do is we can plot discharge on the x-axis and turbidity on the y-axis, and it gives us this thing that looks like a loop. And this is called a hysteresis loop, where essentially we're plotting turbidity as a function of discharge over the course of this event. And so this point here is aligning with the peak of the turbidity. This point here is aligning with the peak of the discharge. And how does this tell us where sediment comes from? Well, let's think about at the outlet of the watershed. This is where we're placing our sensors. If sediment is reaching the outlet of the watershed well before discharge or the peak of runoff, well, that indicates that sediment sources are likely coming from nearby. And the opposite is also true. So, what we can do is we can have turbidity that arrives after the discharge signal, and that implies that sediment is coming from far away. So got just a few minutes left, but so to talk about really quickly our case study. So this is the Middlefork of Beargrass Creek. And here we have two sensor stations at the USGS gauges on Lexington Road and Old Cannons Lane. And here we have discharge as well as turbidity being monitored now, thanks to MSD and the USGS for getting those installed recently. And then these flags in the back are also showing where we're monitoring sediment with our tube traps. And here we're showing two flags. This is where we're going to expand our monitoring in the near future. And what we can do with this, right, is we can look at these sub-watersheds within the Middlefork of Beargrass Creek, which might help us understand how, for example, catchments or watersheds with different land uses and physiographies, how sediment transports through these different watersheds. So these are the questions really. How do sediment sources vary in subcatchments with different land uses and drainage areas? And then where can we apply restoration to potentially reduce sediment loads? Another thing that we're very interested in here is karst. So karst is very common throughout Kentucky, and we think that it actually exists within the Middlefork of Beargrass Creek. This is showing the Middlefork of Beargrass Creek near Linden Lane, I think. And during base flow conditions, the creek actually goes dry. So we asked this question, when is sediment actually being transported from the headwaters of the Middlefork, during different periods of the hydrograph? So that's the research. We don't actually have any fingerprinting results yet, but I did just want to show, what sediment fingerprinting could look like. So this is a study out in eastern Kentucky where this work has been done. And it's showing, sediment from 3 different sources and 2 different watersheds, so a forest, a reclaimed mine, and a stream bank. And so what this is showing is the carbon and nitrogen signal or signature of these different sediments, different sources, and the samples that are collected at the outlet of the watershed fall, somewhere in between these samples. So with respect to sediment hysteresis, really we need more data to see if, this clockwise hysteresis loop that we found is the typical pattern. So that will be ongoing for the next couple of years. Hopefully we'll be able to collect months or years of data and analyze that. And then finally, there is an opportunity for volunteers to get involved to help answer this question, when is sediment being transported from the headwaters of the Middlefork? The Middlefork, like I said, goes dry in the headwaters due to karst. And one thing that you all can do to help is just to take a picture at this site, which essentially would create a chronologue of stream flow conditions. And I think I'm a little bit over time. So I'd be happy to take a couple of questions if there is time, but thank you so much. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Let's clap again. You couldn't hear.
Thank you so much.
Any questions for Tyler?
So I just have a comment. So one of the things Tyler and I are working on is that we're hoping to be able to use this data to help with that phase 2 effort in Middlefork Beargrass Creek so that we can better understand where the sediment load is coming from. One of the things we did during the first phase was we did a lot of stream flow. One of the reasons we knew that the data that we were collecting really didn't align with what's First of all, I want to thank Tyler for being willing to partner with me on this, and it's a big topic. I'm super passionate about it, so.
Awesome. Just a lovely comment from Colette about partnering MSD and
Colette and MSD have been great through all this. So yeah, thanks so much, Colette and everyone for the support, and really looking forward to increasing monitoring in Louisville over the course of my career. And happy to get more involved with the Watershed Watch too. So thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And yeah, Tyler talked about opportunity for more volunteer support. So we'll definitely keep you updated as we have that ready. And Mark is ready. I'm just gonna share my screen again here. We have the room until 9, but then we really have to leave. Okay, Mark Long, he'll introduce himself. Quick intro. Tell us what you're doing.
Very quick. I don't want to make Tamara mad. So yeah, I'm Mark Long. I just took on the role of president of the Beargrass Creek Alliance. We're getting the board back together. And I did this because there is a lot going on, and I'm a pretty cynical guy, but looks like a very promising time for Beargrass Creek and possibilities in the watershed. There's several ongoing projects and plans, and just a tremendous amount of interest in what happens there. Primary among these, of course, is the Army Corps of Engineers Three Forks of Beargrass Creek Ecosystem Restoration Plan, which is actually now more than $140 million. And there's a series of 12 projects covering over 600 acres on all three forks, and looks very feasible. It's going to be complicated, but it looks like it could be done. And what's is exciting to me about that is how it could be a catalyst for a bigger renaissance in the whole watershed, and sort of amplify a lot of other things that are happening and have happened. In 2019, we had the Congress for the New Urbanism, where Gresham Smith came up with a really neat series of demonstration projects to activate access points along the south. The South Fork. Then there's the Middlefork plan. There was even in the Butchertown, Nulu, Phoenix Hill neighborhood plan, there's a whole chapter on Beargrass Creek because so many people were interested in it. And there's all kinds of interesting ideas about that. There's decades worth of plans and greenway designs and everything like that, all of which have really cool ideas that can be brought back to life. And for me, maybe most exciting of all are the ideas and projects and plans we haven't even heard yet, because we need to talk to the people that are living in the neighborhoods. We need to talk to the students that are taking the samples along Beargrass Creek and hearing what they're seeing and what they're inspired to do. Hearing from neighborhood groups, church groups, and this brings us to what we were just talking about a moment ago, gentrification and displacement. This is, Beargrass Creek is an urban waterway, and you don't not do something. You don't make a place nicer because it could boost property values. You can't think about it in isolation. You have to bring the people in the neighborhood into the conversation as quickly as possible. And you have to think about things like housing and everything else at the same time, because that's the lesson we can learn from things like the High Line in New York, where a great thing, it's beautiful, everybody loves it, but it completely transformed the neighborhood, forced all the mom and pop businesses out, so we can learn from that. And so you bring these conversations in as early as possible, because making something nicer for the people that live there shouldn't be the problem. It's laying bare another problem, whether that's housing or something else. And so I hope that the Beargrass Creek Alliance can be a forum and a facilitator for bringing all these different puzzle pieces together as the redevelopment and revival of Beargrass Creek happens over in the coming years. So yeah, I hope that's what we can be. I hope we can be a central point of information for anyone who cares about the creek. A means for people to get involved, whether that be cleanups or something I'm big on, demonstration projects, and be a resource hub. And we're just getting started again, getting a board back together. Got some really, really great people who've accepted to do that. We're working with Kentucky Waterways Alliance and their new director, Michael Washburn, and Laura, who you'll hear from here shortly. And in the meantime, I'm just badgering everyone I can about the Army Corps plan and trying to make sure everyone's talking to each other. And, hopefully that'll be a good catalyst for the future. So I think Beargrass Creek should be a world-class, thriving, ecological, recreational, economic resource to benefit everybody in Louisville. And let's see what we can do. Just taking my time.
No, 9 seconds left. How can we get involved?
How can you get involved? Well, we're going to be getting the website back up so that you can, sign up for cleanups. Like we're going to be involved with the Earth Day cleanup, which is being sort of quarterbacked by Councilman Owen. And this is all in flux. We're getting the website back up, and just look at, watch this space. We got the Facebook page, we got various places. We'll get the word out. We'll get some events going. It's going to be good.
Thanks, Mark. I'm just looking here on Zoom and making sure we're okay on sound. There was a comment, but I think we're okay. All right, we're gonna keep moving. We have and I had this slide there for you too, Mark, but we forgot. That's okay. All right, we're gonna keep moving along. Last but certainly not least, we have Laura Gregory, who's gonna talk about her new role as Watershed Program Director with Kentucky Waterways Alliance.
Yeah, it's just the
arrow there.
And
Cool.
you should be all set.
All right. Hello, everyone. Sleepy, maybe a little. Okay. So I'm Laura Gregory. I am the new Watershed Program Director for Kentucky Waterways Alliance. For the last 5.5 years, I was the Red River Watershed Coordinator. So new role, we're reviving our watershed program, though we've had projects going throughout the time. That's me. I do lots of things. I've been doing lots of things on Red River cleanups. We've had watershed murals. We've had lots of stream sampling. And, did y'all know that there is a wear your life jacket to work day? Anyways, so with our watershed program, we are working on the Kentucky Watershed Network, and it's envisioned as an alliance of watershed groups that work together to support each other with the overall goal of increasing the collective impact for water quality improvements. So yeah, we all know, so everybody here cares about water. I have a strong sense of that. And I think we probably all know too that you have to know the place, know the water, you have to love it. So once you know it, you probably start to love it. And that's what we're doing with our water monitoring. You probably are getting to know your water. But what we're really wanting to do is take that and have some actions going forward. With our watershed network, we are really, KWA is hoping to support watershed groups across the state. And we'll be doing that through weekly office hours. We'll have some informal happy hours that'll start virtually so that we can reach people across the state. But then I'll be starting to do that across the 7 basins. We'll be having some formal trainings this is for groups and for individuals, people that just have concerns about their water quality and want to learn more. And we will be doing that through a lot of our.
May I have your attention, please? The South Central Regional Library will be closing in 30 minutes at 9 p.m. If you need to call for a ride, please do so at this time.
Okay.
If you need help locating materials.
I
please
could
ask
use a
staff
ride.
member. If you have items to check out, please do so at the circulation desk. If you're using a branch laptop, please return it by 8:45. Again, the South Central Regional Library will be closing in 30 minutes at 9 p.m.
Okay, so, we're gonna send out newsletters. We hope to have our Kentucky Water Conference next October. And we're also working on, we'll be formulating a clean water community action playbook. So as you join the network, as you, as your friends, people that have interest in water quality improvements, join the network. We'll be dispersing this information. And ideally, the network is groups helping other groups too, because there's so many variations of where groups are at in formation, or maybe they've been around and they're reforming. Maybe it's one person and they really want to start a group. So we're here to help. And then we are also seeking funding for seed grants to help groups start taking actions because it has to start somewhere. And we hope that that leads to then watershed planning, watershed plans lead to bigger improvements. So signing up is contacting me right now. We'll have a more official sign up soon. And signing up really is, you'll receive a survey. We're going to be sending out surveys starting next month because we're really wanting to know where everyone is at and where the biggest need is, and reaching people where they're at. So it'll be information dissemination, KWA support, and then watershed group network support. And with the watershed network, it'll be what the network makes it. And we think that the more groups that are involved will have a better understanding, more understanding of the needs and issues and resources, and we'll have more strength amongst all the groups. And that will generate more funding and we will have more impact. So we're really hoping to get everyone on board for Love and Clean Water. So that's my contact. Hello.
Questions for all right. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you on Zoom for sticking around. I think that that's it for us. Reminder of our sampling weekends. We'll email all this out. Sampling new trainings for the spring, our fundraisers. Any questions on Zoom? I'll look at the chat real quick. Any more questions from anybody? Further discussion?
Let's give a round of applause for our president up here.